And thank you, Anil, for inviting me to share my perspectives. So I came in the morning and I heard the minister as well as Mr. Singh, and some of the aspects I absolutely kind of agree that the growth has to be inclusive, the growth has to be sustainable. It's a very diverse country. And I saw the setting of the G20 agenda by India, which is very different from, say, Indonesia or the other countries that preceded us. And it is in sync with our national interests. So one area that we work in and have been working in for the last 25 years is the healthcare industry. And I find there that the lacunae that we saw in during the time of COVID, that despite being the pharmacy of the world, we were not able to find a new medicine at that point of time. Okay, so I think policymakers have woken up to that and is trying to address that, because you saw from the speech of the Prime Minister on August 15th, then now the budget. There is a whole lot of focus on innovation. And I think that when you look at a new India and India's position in the new world order, I think innovation is really the fulcrum, because that will help us leapfrog to newer heights, and we have all the capabilities for it. And I'm not just talking about biosciences, which I know, but even other areas like IT and for example, Ayush. Ayush is in G20 a very major focus, and in Ayush area, I think there's a lot that we can do so that these products go through a process which is internationally understood and accepted, so that these products are not sold, on the fringes, but more in the mainstream. So, having started with the G20 and all, I must tell you that for investment, because I've been working actually not for 25 years, 30 years now. And what is it that investors find difficult in India? And as you're aware, the chairman, you talked about the stock exchanges. So it is mostly perception about a country. How do others perceive us and our country? In that, I feel that there has been many things that we have not done it right, and it kind of cuts across previous governments. So I'm talking about my experience in the last 30 years. So one sense is that something that we have not done very well. And the Vodafone phone, the case, the retrospective taxation is a great example of that. That is number one. The number two I would talk about is that we don't kind of, adhere to certain international standards which are accepted in certain fields. Say, for example, we practice in the area of food. So there is the Codex Alimentarius, which is WHO and FAO led. It's not like in a particular country. Those standards, as we started on a journey of making our, FSSA and the, new institutions and the new regulations, we follow some bit of it, but not the entire bit of it. But if we follow that, I think it not only gives us, our companies, Indian companies, market access in other countries, because that's the accepted norm, but also that other companies are willing to kind of invest in India, make India the hub for entire, say the South or neighboring countries. So, adhering to international standards, I can speak from my experience that it's certainly food, it's certainly in, pharmaceuticals. Why in pharmaceuticals? I think I heard somebody mention in the morning about the unfortunate events in the Gambia, Indonesia, where children died apparently from drugs that were exported from India. And you just need that one bad, event to kind of color the entire industry and exports. What is it that the Indian government can put in place to ensure that such things don't happen in the future? So that, because this is like a huge area for us, pharmaceutical exports. Most of the larger companies actually export more than 60% of the revenue comes from foreign markets, not necessarily from India. Okay, so my last comment would be about another problem, which is a huge problem and that has to be comprehensively addressed, is the dispute resolution mechanisms. Be it the court system or be it arbitration, we haven't done well. Okay. So, and I have been the additional advocate general for Assam in the Supreme Court. So it's not just for commercial cases, but it's also for cases where the government is a party. In many of the cases, most of the cases actually, government is a party. So there is a lot of delay. In a commercial case, it takes about 8 to 12 years for a matter to achieve quietus. And by that time, say we do patent-related cases, infringement cases, patent expires and the case is not over. Okay, so that kind of situation, how do we avoid that? One other aspect of litigation is that we don't have enough judges, both in the high courts and in the lower courts, and especially most of the commercial cases go to courts where there is original jurisdiction, say Delhi, Chennai, Bombay, and Calcutta. In this courts, it's essential that there is a commercial, courts. There is an act, but except for Delhi High Court, nobody else has followed through, so that at least you give a lesser time period for commercial cases to be settled. Now let's come to the second issue in that, which is tribunalization. So tribunals were thought to be bringing in expertise and less time. And unfortunately, that has not turned out to be the case, as a Law Commission report found in 2021 that there are pendency in those tribunals have been pretty huge, and most of it is because there is undue appeals to the High Court at every step of the way. So that kind of defeats the purpose for which these tribunals were set up. But I feel that we sometimes kind of throw the baby with the bathwater. So the government went on a rampage to remove tribunals. So they removed our 19 tribunals. In the last occasion, 7. And I can tell you about the experience that I had with one such tribunal, which is called the IPAB, the Intellectual Property Appellate Board, which required, the expertise and the domain knowledge expertise actually for, say, patent-related issues, and also that was done away with, without making a sustainable, different pathway for, those cases to be tried. So I think a little bit of thinking through as to why you are doing a certain action is very important. And finally, arbitration. I feel that we kind of yo-yo. The 1996 law was very good. It was in sync with international standards. It had a pathway for foreign arbitral awards to be enforced in India. But unfortunately, in the 2021 amendment, we went through many amendments. We now gave courts the unconditional power to stay arbitral award on the ground that the underlying contract is, got through fraud. So now you kind of, get in this different layers, which is not necessary, because if two parties get together, unless it's the government, that's a different point. We have already, we know about the underlying, understanding. So you can't impute, allegations of fraud into it and have a court sit over it. So I don't think that if we wanted India to be a hub of arbitration, international arbitration, I don't think that that's really the right path to go. And the final point I will make is that I think we are, too quick to ban. There's a ban culture, unfortunately. That it's like that we resort to it because that's the easiest to do. I think ban is not really the policy pathway. It should be more how you regulate and look at best country practices on this. And the two areas that I would like to because these are emerging areas, are the virtual digital assets, like cryptos, and also e-cigarettes and the whole area of, is there like, smokeless tobacco, is that an option that could be given to people who are already smoking, so is there an option out? So I think these are some of the comments, I would like to share in the 7 minutes. I'm sorry if I sounded staccato and very cryptic, but the idea was that I finished it in 7 minutes. Thank you.